All rise and shout. Much to discuss. Let's get to what's trending.
Backdoor Noah driving dunk. Jackson Robinson, and Jackson hammers it home.
What I want to do to take it to the next level is make this place the best place in college basketball to prepare young men to play in the NBA. And I think with my background, I think we're going to be able to get that done, and I really look forward to doing that.
What's trending, presented by BYU Food to Go, the MVP of your next event. Well, Jason, over the weekend, we tried to get some sleep, tried to catch up, get some rest, recuperate. Transfer portal, it never goes to sleep. It's like credit card interest, Jason. It's always there. BYU's Richie Saunders and Dallin Hall currently in the portal. You may have heard, BYU fans. And we discussed Friday how we were feeling about the chances that those two prominent and important players return to BYU and hold the core of what the Cougars did last year, essentially together. Since then, we've learned that Dallin Hall has added Duke and Virginia to his list of high-level suitors who have high-level NIL capabilities and certainly prestige on the Duke end. And Richie Saunders is currently visiting Kentucky. He was greeted by Leanne and Mark Pope at the airport today. Matt Jones, radio host in Kentucky, said Mark Pope's been personally picking up and taking recruits to the airport this weekend for visits. I don't think I've ever heard of a coach doing this before. This is one of Mark's guys. This is not a shocker that he would do this for Richie, but the point remains, the push is full on for Richie at Kentucky, and the list for Dallin Hall just gets more convoluted with so many different high-level options. So, Jason, my question is, did this weekend's transfer portal news change your opinion on who, if any of these guys, will be back for BYU next season?
Yeah, unfortunately it has. And when you and I were talking about this last week, and again, this is not coming with information. This is just my gut feeling and sort of reading the tea leaves with all of the information that's coming out. It feels like there's a real chance BYU's going to lose all these players. Now, that's certainly not set in stone, and you never know. And what I'm hoping is, and look, we hear this when it comes to normal recruiting where you have 5 official visits. And even if you really know where you're going to go, why not take advantage of being able to experience all of these new things? So what I'm hoping is that Richie is just doing that. I told you last week I felt pretty good that Richie was going to come back. I can't say that I feel the same way today as I did last week. I was really hoping that with the hiring of Kevin Young and what we saw, that was going to be enough. And we had heard that was very well received by Richie and others.
Yes.
And so I was very hopeful that meant, you know what, let's just go ahead and kind of what we saw with Trevin now, although Trevin wasn't in the transfer portal, you sort of see it like I'm all in. And we haven't seen that, and now Richie's going on this look at Kentucky, which he has every right to be able to do. I just don't feel as confident. And right now, if you were to ask me, we already know Khalifa is going to Louisville. So the other two that are out there that have been made public, with Saunders and Hall, if you're asking me today, do I think either of those are coming back? While I certainly hope it's the case, my answer, if I had to go yes or no, would probably be no.
Yeah, leaning toward no. It's tough to see those images because the relationships that exist between Mark and Leanne Pope and Richie and his wife. Like, those are things that you can't put a price on. And obviously, Kentucky basketball is as blue as a blue blood gets, but it's the relationship that Richie has with Mark that makes me go, okay, I know that Richie was in on the original call with Kevin Young when he went on Zoom and greeted the whole team and started talking about Chris Paul and Devin Booker and visiting guys and getting them to work out with the Suns and like all of that stuff. Richie was on that call, and I know he was very excited about the prospect of doing that. And I know that one of his major concerns had at least partially been resolved, which is, well, I don't know who the coach at BYU is going to be, and there's just so much speculation out there. Once Kevin Young was hired and that call happened, Richie was on it, and he was excited, visibly excited. We all would have been when we're talking about what Kevin Young brings to the table as the NBA's highest paid assistant. Dallin Hall was not on that call. Jackson Robinson was not on that call, and Ali Khalifa was not on that call. Everybody else was in that room and there. And so there was this idea that, okay, now we think that Richie could be coming back. Well, now he's visiting Lexington in Kentucky, and he's going to be overwhelmed when he walks into Rupp Arena and he sees all the prestige and the championship banners and the hardware. And that's going to be tough to beat, for sure.
And we don't know what they're going to offer in terms of an
NIL deal.
We don't know that.
Frankly, Mark Pope is a little bit desperate right now because he's had so much of his roster leave or declare to go pro. There are a ton of open spots on Kentucky's roster right now, and so the push for Richie, I'm sure, has gone next level. And he's got Cody Feger working with him as well. And Cody's an incredible recruiter. We hate that he left BYU because he was so good for BYU.
Love Cody.
Now he's on Mark Pope's staff and already doing some significant work. So, and we know that Cody Feger was highly valued among the players. Like, there are a lot of players that would have been fine if Cody had been hired as the head coach. So they're working around that, Jason. I don't know. I'm probably leaning like 30 to 40% that one of these guys comes back, and more like 60 to 70% that both actually leave. I stand corrected on Friday. I thought we're going to find out that at least one of these guys is coming back by this time next week, and I don't know if I am there right now.
Look, if last week taught us anything, I think one thing we can take away, and look, maybe we're just grasping at positive straws here, but we talked about how the morning that Colin Chandler decommitted to BYU and committed to Kentucky, just how low of a morning that was, right? Everybody was down. Everybody was depressed. And then guess what? By the end of the night, everyone was elated with the hiring of Kevin Young. The wild swings of emotion, we've seen that multiple times as sports fans. And last week, we thought, oh, wow, this thing is bad right now. And then it got great by the end of the day. Maybe this is another one where we're thinking, oh, it's not going our way right now. But maybe by the end of the day or by tomorrow, you never know what can change. And again, maybe I'm just grasping at straws because I really want Richie and Dallin to come back. We've talked about the production that they bring. Just in terms of Richie, Richie's numbers are what they are.
Yeah.
But it's not just his numbers. It's his attitude. It's what he brings to the game in really important times. He lifts everybody up with his energy and what he does on the floor, and I don't want to lose that specifically.
No BYU fan does. And when you look at the Ken Pomeroy Index and BYU's numbers as a team, they were off the charts good this season. They finished at number 18. They're a top 20 Ken Pom team because of who was involved and how unselfish and the best locker room in America rhetoric is out there. But you just talk about like individual players. Richie Saunders, from a national standpoint, in terms of like effectiveness rate, like he's a top 40 player as an individual based on what he does in the minutes that he is playing on the floor.
Yeah, people that just look, they're not going to understand how important he can be to your team.
For sure. So that's tough because, he's an energy guy, he's the Energizer Bunny, but every team has those guys. Richie's a scoring threat too, and he just makes everybody around him better. So yeah, no question, this one hurts a lot, Jason, if he decides to go to Kentucky. And frankly, you see these images, that is really tough.
Look, and on the other side of it, the personal side of this, I like both of these guys. You and I get a chance to talk with them, and we get to do interviews and talk off camera with them. Sure. I like both of these guys in Dallin and Richie. So I certainly hope that there's an opportunity for BYU to still be in the mix with both.
By the way, for those wondering, I said top 30 national player. Offensive rating, number 27 in the entire country, Richie Saunders.
All right, so last week, one of the major topics was the fact that Mark Pope, since leaving to go to Kentucky, had not made any statement, any thank yous, made any mention of BYU outside of the slip-up on SportsCenter when he talked about being a diehard Cougar fan.
I'm a huge fan of the Cougars.
But yesterday, that changed. Yesterday, Coach Pope did put out a statement yesterday morning saying, quote, "On this sacred Sunday morning, I am filled with immense gratitude for the blessings that have led us here. BYU will always be an incredibly special place to our family. Soon after we arrived at BYU, one mentor told me that, quote, BYU had more to offer me than I had to offer BYU. Those words proved to be so true as we felt the BYU experience change our lives for the better. It's overwhelming to reflect on the countless lifelong friendships that we forged at BYU. We are so grateful." So the statement came out. What was your reaction to Mark Pope's goodbye message to BYU?
One, wow, it actually happened, because I had gotten to the point where
thought it was
I
not
didn't
coming at all.
expect it to happen, because we had been 9 days removed from when he was announced over social media that he was Kentucky's next head coach, and a full week from when he was introduced. And I just thought, you know what, maybe Mark doesn't do goodbyes. It's kind of weird that there's no like closure there for the fans. I just thought it was strange that the fans didn't get their goodbye, and so I was happy. Like, I was happy that it happened, because I know a lot of BYU fans were kind of at odds with this, where they're like, I like what Mark Pope brought to BYU, and it was really exciting, and I enjoyed the games, and I enjoyed his teams and his charisma. Why hasn't he said goodbye? Like, I want to root for his teams at Kentucky, but as fickle as people and fans can be, I don't blame BYU fans for the way they felt before they got the goodbye from Mark Pope, which is, if he doesn't take the time to at least like say thank you for a second, why should I root for Kentucky? And so I'm happy on both sides that now BYU fans can have their closure, and there doesn't have to be this weird thing where it's like, well, gosh, it's going to be hard to root for him at Kentucky because he just bailed and didn't say a word to us. So I think this was obviously the right move by Mark, and I thought it was well crafted, it was well versed. Just a little strange that it took as long as it did to get there, but I'm happy for both sides of this. There's closure there, and now BYU fans can feel at peace that he loved BYU, and that if they want to root for him at Kentucky, now they have what they need to do so. Yeah, when it came out, I was one that I still was surprised that it had not happened. So when it finally came out and it was there, I thought, okay, good. Now everybody can turn the page. He acknowledged what BYU meant to him, and we can drop this as a storyline. And so I was like you. I thought it sounded like it came from the heart, like it sounded genuine, like everything about it was great. And then, but with hindsight, there's a part of me that's like, but when he sent this, he knew he was going to have Richie in Lexington that night. You know what I mean? There's that inner cynic speaking in you, Jason. So there, you know, the fan in me was like, you know. But at the end of the day, because it had been so much time since he'd left, you know, I think there were a lot of people resigned to the fact that it wasn't going to come. The fact that it did come, I think, was good. I do believe it was genuine. For whatever reason, it just took him a little bit longer than maybe what people thought. I liked it, but yeah, knowing that Richie was going to be in town that night, looking back on it in hindsight, it's interesting timing here now that he's closing in on one of BYU's guys. Yeah. And not just that, the number 27 offensive rating player in the entire country in Richie Saunders. Again, like, I think we can just like tie it off now. Yeah, now just move on with it. Like, just move on with it. It's good. Yeah. It's done. And it didn't take much. That's what I said last week. I'm like, hey, little statement, 15 seconds, whether it's text or it's a video, just something to like thank specifically BYU fans. And the message was great. It really was. I've got a bunch of cynics around me, too, on social media. People are like, oh, well, apparently his sports information director finally got to him that this would be the good publicity move. And I'm like, you know what? I don't care about that. I'm not going to go down that road. I'm happy that both sides can kind of like come to this, hey, good luck. And he said thank you to the fans for all their support. Great. Let's move on. Time to move on. All right. I don't know how we'll feel about that if Richie Saunders actually signs with Kentucky. Will we still be Spencer's tone will be very different tomorrow if that happens. Will closure still remain if Richie does sign with Kentucky?